Alrighty, I think we can go ahead and get this show on the road. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our monthly live stream Media of the Month Club. I am your host, as always, Vic, and I am here today to chat with all of you about a media that I love this month, as we have been doing every month for the past several months. My cat is just off screen, and I don't know whether she's gonna pounce on me or not. Nope, she's jumping down. Okay, great. Hi everyone, welcome. I am seeing a few folks here already. Toon is here in the chat. Hello, welcome, Toon. This is one of those days where I'm just so sleepy, never want to fully get up. I totally feel you. Happy Thanksgiving weekend to everyone who celebrated. I know that turkey tends to make people sleepy. I also had Thanksgiving dinner with my family on Thursday. So if you celebrated, happy Thanksgiving. Hello, Magical. Welcome. Thanks for joining. As always, so good to see you here. If it's past tense, does that mean it's Thanksgave? Yes, Tom. Yes, exactly. That is how that works. And I believe also Thursday was Indigenous Day of Mourning. I don't want to forget that as well. You know, Thanksgiving, as always, has its roots in colonial history that is deeply problematic, to say the least. So, you know, I think that as much as I think it is important to spend time, you know, ideally more than once a year, but at least once a year if you're not going to do it any other time, to kind of reflect and talk about like what you're grateful for. I think like that is something that is pretty valuable about Thanksgiving. And also, of course, you know, gathering with people that you love and eating good food. That's just like the tent pole of any great holiday. But yes, definitely don't want to ignore the history and the reality for a lot of people that it's not actually a fun holiday, and it's quite painful for a lot of people. So don't want to ignore that reality as well. So yes, happy Thursday, happy weekend, long weekend if you got some time off work. And yeah, happy end of November. Wow, this month has really flown by. How is everyone doing today? How are all of you doing? Full disclosure, I had a kind of rough month. Just to you know, be fully honest with you all and to get a little bit vulnerable, I don't have like a full presentation the way that I usually do every month. This month I decided to kind of keep it a little bit more lax, a little bit more low-key, put a little bit less effort into it, just because I had some other stuff going on in my life during this month that made it kind of a little chaotic, a little bit I wasn't in the best mood for most of this month, I'll put it that way. I was kind of in a bummer place. You know, I think also seasonal depression is also kicking in for me. We had our time change here in the US at the beginning of the month, and it's just like getting so dark so early these days, and it's such a bummer to like leave work in the evening and have it already be dark, and it's like, oh my god, I don't feel like doing anything. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like, you know, running errands. I don't feel like doing any chores. I just want to like go home and veg out, you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely have just very low motivation this month. I've posted a couple times too. Hello, kitty. I posted a couple times too about how I've been wanting to like edit the previous streams down into videos and get those posted on like actual videos, but I just have not gotten around to it. I spent like a week fighting with my computer with technical difficulties, and after that I just got like so frustrated I like lost steam. So apologies that I have not gotten that done yet, but I'll definitely have some time in December, so I'm hoping that I can do that and edit those streams down, because as much as I appreciate all of you all tuning in live, and as grateful as I am that you all take the time out of your day to come hang out with me live, I do put a lot of like work into these streams, and so I feel like I would like more people to, you know, see them if possible, if they're interested. I do feel like we talk about some interesting stuff here sometimes, so I do want to share that with my wider audience and with people who might be interested in that. And, you know, YouTube tends to hide the live stream VODs, and, you know, they don't really promote those in the algorithm. So I do want to cut them up into videos and post them so that more people can see them. Yeah, totally magical. Cannot believe tomorrow's December. This year has like really flown by. Yeah, Toon also feeling it. That's such a mood. my cat just like so desperately wanting to show her butt to the camera. That's just how it goes sometimes. But yeah, just to like get a little bit vulnerable, I had kind of a rough month, low motivation, just kind of feeling kind of down in general. And yeah, that's also part of why I didn't want to do too much effort for this month's stream. This is why we're just going to be really just mostly be talking today. And I might pull up some like songs from the album, like in our track splitting software that I had used last time in September. So I might do that later on. But for the most part, we're just really going to be chatting. I do have my notebook here. You can kind of see it a little bit off screen. I have a few pages of notes of just stuff that I want to talk about. So this is going to be a little bit more of an off the cuff discussion. And also like because I was in kind of like a downer mood this month and kind of just feeling a little bit more melancholy in general, it kind of lended nicely to listening to this album. Radiohead is kind of known for their more sad songs a lot of the time, but like any other Radiohead album that I have enjoyed previously, I felt like this one was quite nuanced. Like A Moon-Shaped Pool is often cited as Radiohead's like saddest album. I think a lot of musicality, sonically, the sounds in this album tend to be a little bit more like melancholy, a little bit more like devastating in a lot of ways. So I think like a lot of people have kind of cited that. But just like any other Radiohead album, I found some parts of it sad. I found some parts of it uplifting and beautiful, some parts of it cathartic. And I really wasn't planning to get obsessed with this Radiohead album. Also, I'm still congested, so I apologize if I have to like blow my nose occasionally. I have like a handkerchief down on my desk, so if I like bend down and I'm like blowing my nose, that's what's happening. So apologies in advance if that happens. But yeah, so as I was saying, I really loved this album and felt like it was really fitting for the mood that I was in this month. I didn't really intend to get obsessed with this album, but I did kind of accidentally listen to one of the songs and I was like, oh wow, this song is so great. I haven't heard this song before. It like came up on shuffle for me. And I was like, oh, I wonder which Radiohead album this is from. And I checked it. It was A Moon-Shaped Pool. And I was like, okay, I haven't listened to that album yet. I'm going to kind of ignore it and like not listen to it yet because I wasn't quite like sure if I wanted to start listening to a new Radiohead album yet. So I kind of ignored it. And then the song just kind of like came back to me in a weird way. Like this is kind of the way I listen to music, and part of why I love Radiohead so much is because it's really actually hard for me to like listen to new music and listen to new songs, because I feel like the type of music that I'm drawn to are the songs that like I already know really well, the songs that are kind of like in my head, the songs that I remember. And so like when I listen to a new song, it's hard for me to connect with it right away because it's like not already in my memory. But once I listen to a new song, sometimes my memory will like bring it back to me in kind of a way that I can't control. And the song will play in my head and that'll like make me want to go listen to it again. And so that's kind of how I can get into music in a weird way. And that tends to happen to me a lot with Radiohead, because like the beauty that I've experienced while listening to Radiohead is that like I'll listen to their songs and maybe not quite like get it right away. Like it doesn't really click with me, or I'm not really like able to follow it because they have some like unique song structures or unique chord progressions that are unique and unfamiliar to my ears, right? As someone who is still developing my music taste, I don't listen to a lot of like jazz or any of that kind of stuff. So those elements are kind of foreign to me. So it takes some time for me to kind of get used to them. And then like later when I least expect it, those songs will just sort of like come back from within me and compel me to like go listen to them again. And I feel like I hear something new, or I gain something else out of it the like second, third, dozenth time that I listen to these songs, right? And so that's part of what I love so much about listening to Radiohead, is that like the way that I listen to music and the way that I tend to like listen to the same songs and albums over and over again, it lends really nicely to Radiohead's music and the complexity of their arrangements, because I can get something new out of listening to it every time I listen to it on repeat, right? So that's part of why I love it so much and why I've gotten so obsessed with their music and the band. And Bring the Salsa is here in the chat. I'm not going to stick around here too long, but gotta say the album is incredible. Totally agree with you there. Feels different from all the other stuff, but has that knot of similarity, you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. And I do have some notes about that as well too, that I will talk about as well too, how I think that this album is so sonically unique compared to their other works, but also like still has that very Radiohead quintessential sound, which is really unique to their band. And yeah, I'll definitely talk about that as I go through my notes as well here too. Yeah, so yeah, I kind of talked about how I got into the album. It just sort of like happened. And then kind of like how I listen to Radiohead, how I get into their music, right? That's also something I kind of wanted to talk about. And also, like, you know, I mentioned that I've been kind of having a rough month. Something else that I've been dealing with that is kind of hard to talk about, honestly. Like, you know, I one of my fatal flaws is I really struggle to like ask for help from people. I like really don't want to be a burden to people that I care about. I don't want to like be unnecessary like stress for someone. So I try to keep my feelings and my problems and my emotions pretty tightly lidded. Uh and that has caused many problems for me throughout my life as I'm learning, as I have like been working on this in therapy recently. And so a lot of the times like I have these emotions that like don't really have a specific cause or like a specific like rationale, you know what I mean? Just because of like the hardships I've had in my past that I like haven't really processed properly. um and so something that I've been working on in therapy recently is how do I actually feel and process my emotions rather than intellectualizing and trying to understand them with logic. I feel like this is a trap that a lot of people fall into. And it's definitely something that I am noticing a lot with me is that whenever I go through something difficult, my brain almost automatically, like instinctually, without even me noticing it, will jump into logic to try to avoid the emotion. So, for example, these past couple months or so, I've been kind of faced with a bit of loneliness, a bit of like rejection, a bit of like friend stuff going on that has like left me feeling a bit isolated. And in my head, after I experienced that stuff, my brain was just like, you know what? It's for the best. I maybe dodged a bullet there. At least I learned something from the experience. At least I kind of gained some confidence. At least I can kind of take what I learned from this and bring it with me to the next time I have an experience like this. And yes, while all of that is true, and while I do think it's important to look on the positive side of things and like see that silver lining just so that you don't like wallow in your own misery, something that I've learned is that in doing that, it kind of prevents me from feeling the sadness, right? And like feeling the upset and negative feelings that come from those experiences. And with those feelings like so tightly bottled up inside me, it's sort of like unconsciously drives my decisions in a lot of ways, right? Like maybe like next time I like someone and I want to ask them out, I might be a little bit more hesitant because like I have these unprocessed feelings from my last experience that are like still sitting physically somewhere in my body that I just like can't feel, you know what I mean? Because I'm so used to ignoring those signals. So that's something that I've been kind of working on in therapy, and Radiohead and their music has actually been something that has been really helpful for me in this process, because like sometimes I'll listen to Radiohead song and it's just like it's pure emotion, you know? There's like that's kind of the beauty with music in general, is like when you listen to music or when you experience like I mean art in general, right? Like I think that a lot of people can experience this with multiple different mediums depending on what their emotionally drawn to. But the beautiful thing for me about music, and with Radiohead's music in particular, is that it's just like pure distilled emotion. There's no logic, there's no rationale when you listen to it. You just like listen to it and you feel it in your body. And I've admittedly cried a lot listening to Radiohead. It has like helped me a lot with my emotional processing as well too. So that's part of why I feel so strongly about their music, and why I think it like resonates with me so deeply and so specifically, and why it means so much to me. And yeah, Tune here in the chat is saying, there's also been an isolated year for me. Keep getting paranoid. I haven't been productive enough. Yeah, I totally feel you on that. Those feelings are so hard to shake off. Especially when like the world is kind of like instilling this idea in you, right? That you have to be productive all the time. And yeah, I totally feel you on that. So because like Radiohead's music has meant so much to me, and because I also like feel so strongly about the genocide going on in Palestine, like this is why I feel like I have to talk about this, right? It's like it's so difficult to talk about, because like I feel like the majority of the discourse around Radiohead and their, political stance, however you want to call it, has been so black and white and so polarized, and everyone is allowed to feel how they want to feel, right? I'm not saying anyone is wrong for feeling how they feel. There are some people on one side who, still love Radiohead, still to some problematic extent, maybe in a parasocial way, kind of like worship the members of the band, and they kind of say like, they can do no wrong, they've done nothing wrong, they're totally innocent, everyone's just been so overly critical to them, and I can understand that perspective. And then on the other side, right, we have the people who are like, fuck Radiohead, they're Zionists, they like are fine with genocide, their music has always sucked, right? Like they're not worth listening to, we should just discard them, cancel them, right? Whatever have you. And those feelings I also totally understand, and I can empathize with everyone across the spectrum of this discourse. But it feels very isolating when these two voices are the majority of the discourse, because I personally don't feel like I fit into either of those camps, right? Like, I don't worship Tom York and Johnny Greenwood and the rest of those guys in the way that some people do. And I also love their music, and it has meant so much to me, and it has influenced me and changed me and healed me in so many ways that like I can't even really describe. And so like I can't just turn around and say like fuck them, they're trash, I'm never going to listen to them again. And I also can't say like they're innocent, let's ignore the atrocities going on in Palestine and let's just like protect these grown men's feelings, right? Like that's just not my truth. And so why I feel like it's important to talk about this is because this is my truth. This is how I feel. This is what I'm experiencing. And I want to share that with people. I want to articulate that with the world. And why I also feel like it's important to articulate with that with the world is because I feel like I am not alone in this, right? I feel like this is a very normal reaction from probably a lot of fans who are maybe feeling a little bit isolated and lost right now because they don't fit into one of these two camps. So that's why I want to talk about it. That's why I feel like it's important to me. I also want to give a little bit of a shout out here. I know like initially at the beginning of the month, I wanted to talk about one of the Dropout shows on today's streams. And then I changed my mind halfway through the month and I was like, actually, I want to talk about this Radiohead album. But I did watch a Dropout special recently that I do want to just touch on very briefly because there was a bit in that special that was related to Radiohead. And I actually might talk more about this special in a future stream because I really enjoyed it and there's like a lot of stuff that I could say about it. So I might do that for like a stream that's coming up next year or something like that. But the special is called Demi Adejuyigbe is going to do one backflip, excuse me. I've seen clips from that special. I think I know the bit that you're talking about. Yeah, Tom. The clips are fantastic. And Demi Adejuyigbe is actually a comedian and a writer that I've been following for many years now. If you have ever watched the videos that he made for the Earth, Wind, and Fire song September. He used to do this like tradition every year for like several years where on September 21st he would like put out this little like music video for the song September by Earth, Wind, and Fire, and every year it got like more and more elaborate, and like it just like totally blew up. It was like this big viral thing, and it's awesome and it's hilarious. Demi is so creative and talented. He also used to have this podcast called Punch Up the Jam where he used to do like song remixes and like kind of funny, you know, remakings of popular songs, which is just like so fun. And he also wrote for The Good Place, which was one of my favorite sitcoms when that was airing back in the day. Yeah, just super talented, super awesome guy. But he has this bit in his special, which is just absolutely hilarious, where he is talking about like jazz music, right? And he's trying to convince people that everybody actually loves jazz, right? Because jazz is the foundation for all modern music that we enjoy today. So, you know, he has this bit where he's like, who likes jazz? And then like a handful of people raise their hand, and he's like, wrong. Actually, everybody likes jazz. And then he goes like, you know, who likes Beyonce? Who likes Kendrick Lamar? And then, you know, obviously a lot more people raise their hands. And so he's like, oh, so you're not, you know, so hating on jazz now, because obviously you all are loving jazz if you like Beyonce, right? And yes, Tom, he's 100% correct. Jazz is awesome. And then, you know, he goes on to say, like, if you like Radiohead, then sorry to say, you like jazz. And then he kind of like points out this one guy in the audience, and he's like, oh, you don't like Radiohead? You think that they're just okay? And the guy in the audience is like, yeah, they're fine. Like, okay, Computer's a good album, I guess. And then Demi, like, on the slideshow behind him, he goes into this big rant, right, about how Radiohead is actually the #1 band in the world and how they're amazing. And then like he has this other character in the show who's like the theater manager, and the theater manager goes like, hey Demi, you know, we only have an hour here in the theater today, and you can't spend that entire time talking about Radiohead. And Demi's like, oh, but I want to talk about Radiohead. And then he kind of like clicks through these slides, and there's like these big wall of text on the slides, you know, as he's clicking through them, as if he had planned to give this like hour-long presentation just on Radiohead, but he has to cut it short because he has to get through the rest of his special, right? That's kind of what the joke of that bit is. But somebody actually went and paused the screen on his essay and figured out what the text of that slide was, and it's actually a fun little Easter egg. You can go find it on Reddit if you want to go read the actual text. But basically what the text says is like, hey, this is like not real Radiohead text. This is just kind of an Easter egg for anyone who wants to pause and read this text, which is just hilarious to me. It's like really funny that he just like decided to drop this Easter egg in the in the middle of his special. But in that Easter egg as well too, he actually has a line in there about how this bit that he's done has been less fun these days because of the controversy that has come about with Radiohead. And he talks about how for him personally, it's just kind of like a bummer that these thoughts and feelings come up whenever he listens to their music, right? So like for him, it's like he'll listen to their music, but these thoughts and feelings of disappointment come up when he listens to them. And honestly, that's kind of where I'm at too, right? Like I still listen to them, I still enjoy their music, but at the same time, the reality for me is that these feelings and these thoughts and these controversies do come up for me as well too. And so like I just don't want to ignore that. I just want to share that truth, you know what I mean? Like share my truth that I am a Radiohead fan that loves their music, but will also criticize them and call them out for their more harmful views if necessary. And I think that this is normal, you know? I think like there are lots of musicians who are, you know, for lack of a better word, problematic and make great music, but because of their like influence and because of their like position in modern culture, like of course a lot of people are still going to enjoy their music, right? Despite the fact that they are like evil or whatever. I mean, even not evil, just, you know, whatever. You get my point. I don't want to talk too much about all this anyway. You all heard my rant in the September stream. that fundraiser, by the way, that Palestinian organization fundraiser is still live. If you wanted to go check it out, donate to it, or share it with people, it's still live. Yeah, you can go check that out if you want to. Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable saying Johnny Greenwood is pretty evil. I mean, if you're playing shows with IDF musicians, like, that's pretty fucked. Magical says this part of the live stream reminds me of the phone as or Phineas and Ferb episode where they tried to get a band for their parents' wedding anniversary when one of their singers compared all genres of music to being tied to blues. Yeah. Blues, jazz, all those like really classical foundational music genres are why we have modern music today. You know what I mean? That's really not an exaggeration. Blues, jazz, that's all music, baby. Exactly, Tom. Exactly. Alrighty. Oh, and I will also say too, one of the reasons I've been kind of bummed this month is Radiohead has been going on tour for the first time in 7 years, and a lot of people thought that they were like done, right? Like their last album came out in 2016. I think they've done some tours since then. I guess 7 years ago, right? So 7 years ago would have been 2018 would have been their last tour. And so, they haven't put out any new music since then. They haven't gone on tour since then. And because I guess of also all this like political discourse with Johnny Greenwood being more Zionist and sympathetic towards Israel, whereas, folks like Ed O'Brien and Philip Selway have been a bit more vocal in support of Palestine. Ed O'Brien has been posting a lot about supporting Palestine, which has been nice to see. But it's been kind of theorized, right, that like because of this schism, like maybe the band is over, maybe they're not going to continue. But some miraculous, like, fate has come about that they decided to go on tour again for the first time in 7 years. And there was a part of me that was like, man, I wish I could drop everything and go to Europe and go see them perform, because like I've seen some of the videos of their older live performances and they're just so incredible. They're an incredible live act. I have to admit that like they are awesome to watch, and I enjoy going to concerts for bands that mean a lot to me. Like I tend not to just go to live shows just for like the fun of it. But I love going to shows to support musicians that I enjoy. I love going to shows to like sing along with songs that I like. Um, and I like feeling that energy. And I also like when artists will do some unique stuff with their live performances. Like they'll add some stuff or they'll perform the song in a slightly different way to the studio recording that makes that live performance kind of like one of a kind and special. You know what I mean? So I really think that they're great live performers, and they're on tour right now. And I've been seeing some videos floating here and there of their tour performances, and man, I gotta admit, I have such bad FOMO. I wish I was there. I wish I could be watching them, and I'm still like so conflicted, to be perfectly honest. Like as much as I encourage you all to like not give them your money, and as much as I have been also trying to not give them my money as much as possible by like downloading their songs and listening to them on CDs and stuff, like I honestly don't know if I have an answer to the question, if they come on tour in the US, do I want to go see them? Because like I do want to go see them, but like, do I want to give them my money? Do I want to like do all of that? I don't know. I kind of hope that I never really have to confront that question if they like just decide never to come tour in the US. But yeah, I'm really bummed that they're on tour right now and I'm not there. And I wish that I could go see them, and I also wish that I could go see them with like a clear conscience. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a bummer. Yeah, Tune, not really someone that listens to a lot of music groups, but you relate to what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah, it just kind of sucks. It's just a bummer. My handwriting is so bad. I cannot read what I wrote here at all. Okay, I think I kind of talked about all the general stuff I wanted to talk about. So we'll move on to talking about the album. Okay, so this album, I have only been really listening to it for this month. Whereas with OK Computer, which I talked about back in September, I had been listening to that for like maybe a year and a half, 2 years at that point. So I had a lot of thoughts about that album. I had a lot of like very critical analysis about that album that I don't quite have with this album yet because I'm still kind of like absorbing it. Oh, did my video freeze? Am I okay here? Let me just check this. Okay, I think I'm okay. Video is good on Twitch. Okay, thank you. Um, yeah, so I don't have as much analysis with this album yet, but I do still have a lot of thoughts. So one of the things I really appreciate about this album and a lot of Radiohead albums is that there tends to be like several of these repeating themes and motifs that kind of like creates these cohesive projects, right? Like even though each song is an individual song, they kind of like ruminate on certain topics that fit together really nicely, right? So with this album in particular, some of the themes that I notice is like false identity, like putting on a facade, putting on a mask, and the way in which our false identity interacts with the world and the way in which we also create false identities for other people and how those false identities that we create for other people inform the way that we interact with them, right? So kind of like parasociality is a little bit of a theme in this album too, which is a little bit ahead of its time. You know, we didn't really have these discussions on parasocial relationships back in 2016 when this album came out. um Yes, totally agree with that too, Magical. It sucks to try to be frugal as an adult. If I really wanted to, I could have spent thousands of dollars and flown to Europe and seen them live. Like I probably could have if I really wanted to, but I wasn't about to do that. You know, I can't afford that. I can't justify that. Um, so yeah, totally agree with you on that there too. Yeah, so false identity, interacting with false identities in society, I think is a big theme in this album. Um, Another big theme in this album is the harsh truth, the harsh reality of truth, and the pain that comes with facing the truth. And a reason that this is a really big theme in the album in general, I think, is because of when this album came out, both in the personal lives of like Tom York and Radiohead, but also like considering the point in their career in which this album came out. You know, this was their final studio album. This was their last ninth full-length album. And um you know, I think that there's like also a lot of themes of self-reflection, introspection, and looking back, going back in time. Those are also lots of themes. The passage of time are lots of themes that I noticed in this album. Tom York also was going through a divorce at this time of his life. He was married to his wife for 23 years, and this year in 2016 was going through the divorce with his wife, and then his wife passed away from cancer just like a few months after they got divorced. And this, so I don't know the exact timeline of events, but I think like they got divorced, this album came out, and then she passed away. I think that's kind of how that happened. And so that experience obviously informs a lot of this album. You know, facing the truth of, oh, maybe my marriage is not working out, right? And the pain of going through a divorce, but like how going through those pains and facing those realities is necessary, right, to move forward. Um, a big motif that I also noticed in this album is the use of light and darkness, and also shadows. So like light, dark, shadows tends to be a recurring motif in this album. And that's also part of why I think that the album cover is in black and white. But it's actually very interesting to me. And like, the album cover too, it's like got this kind of circular shape. It's almost a little bit of yin and yang. And I kind of feel like that plays a part in this album as well too, because of the things that light and darkness represent in this album. So I feel like light represents the harsh truth, right? The painful reality. That's what, like, when a light is shown on something, right? Like something is being illuminated, something is being brought to light. So that is how light is used. And then shadows are often used as an allegory for ignorance. So like wanting to stay in the shadows, or like people staying in the shadows in order to avoid reality. And yeah, darkness as well too, right? Being like this great unknown, like facing the darkness, confronting the unknown is also a motif I noticed in this album. Oh, excuse me while I blow my nose. I'm gonna mute myself while I do this. All right, excuse me there. Another theme I notice a lot in this album is the use of nature imagery, and that's actually kind of a motif that's pretty common in Radiohead's discography in general. They tend to use a lot of nature imagery and a lot of allusion to the natural world, and in this album it is no exception. And something that I also noticed is that there's a lot of parallels to the discussion of climate change and kind of broader issues like that in general. And so the nature imagery, I think, ties in really nicely with that. There's also lots of feelings of wandering, of feeling lost, of feeling like, again, just like that, facing the unknown, right? Feeling like you don't know where to go from here. And something that is also really interesting about this album is the track list is in alphabetical order. And I just thought that that was a really interesting choice. That could have just been kind of like a gimmick a little bit, and kind of just like, oh, this might be a neat thing. Like, let's try to get these tracks in alphabetical order. And I know that they did actually like change the name of a couple of the songs so that like it would be in alphabetical order. So it was an intentional thing that they decided to do that. And it got me kind of thinking of like, what is the function of that? Like, why would they have made that choice? And, maybe this is a reach, maybe this is just my interpretation, but my experience as I was listening to that album with the tracks being in alphabetical order, like sometimes I wanted to listen to a specific song, right? Like, oh man, I really want to listen to Dex Dark, or oh, I really want to listen to Glass Eyes. And as I was like listening to this on CD and flipping through the tracks, I found it to be very easy to remember which track was in which order because it was all alphabetical. I was like, oh yeah, Dex Dark is track number 3 because it starts with D, right? Like it was a lot easier for me to find my way within the album, which I thought was just an interesting contrast to the themes of wandering and feeling lost and not really knowing where you're going. I don't know if that's really what their intention was with putting the album in alphabetical order, but I just thought like the effect of being like almost transported within the world of this album, and at least within this tiny little sonic soundscape dimension almost, there was a feeling of, I know where I am, I know where I'm going, I know how to get to where I want to go, which is so contrasted with some of the themes that are being discussed within the album. And I don't know, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I would love to hear if anyone else has any thoughts on that, on why they think the album is in alphabetical order, or if that has like influence the way that you listen to the album in any way or form, but I just thought that that was really cool and interesting, and at least my experience and interpretation with that. Um, and then when it comes to the album, like musically and sonically, it is just so unique. As mentioned earlier in the chat, there's like no other Radiohead album that quite sounds like this. And they really do this with all of their albums. They always like go really like, hey, we're gonna do something that you least expect, right? They're like kind of always keeping us on our toes with their new albums. Their albums tend not to sound like what their older works are. They're constantly changing their sound. And with this album, they take such a dramatic shift with like the piano instrumentation and the orchestra that they have as well. I believe with this album, they recorded it with the London Chamber Orchestra. Apologies if that's incorrect. I don't quite remember, but I think that like, you know, the added strings and the percussion and the horns that are all added into the instrumentation in this album just give it a really like dramatic feel. And again, kind of like adds to that experience of being transported into like this sonic dimension where you are totally engulfed with this sound, if you know what I mean. I might in the future actually like talk about this album again once I have like absorbed it a little bit more and once I can kind of like articulate a little bit better what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, those are kind of my initial thoughts here. I also think that this is one of their most playful albums in a lot of ways too. Like, you know, like I mentioned, they're always kind of changing up their sound. They're always kind of reinventing themselves. And with this album, I feel like they are very playful with genre in an interesting way. I don't know if anyone else has really had this observation, but they really take inspiration from a variety of different places with this album. Like some songs are like these beautiful classical piano ballads, you know, and then some songs are like a little bit more trip hop. Some songs have like a little bit of like reggae influence, in my opinion. Some of them are a little bit like bossa nova y. There's like a couple like folk ballad type of songs in there too, right? Like, yeah, I just think like this is one of their more playful with genre albums that they've done, and that's something that I always really admire and appreciate about songwriters when they can kind of like toe the line between genres, right? And I feel like that's what Radiohead has been doing their entire career, right? Like they started off as like this rock grunge band and then went on into the world of like electronic music, of like jazz and funk and you know, all these other genres that have made them just so much more than just a rock band. Bring the Salsa says Daydreaming is the best Radiohead song. Don't at me. Daydreaming is absolutely stunning and beautiful. I totally support that decision to have that be your favorite song. It's amazing. Um Speaking of the tracks, those are basically all my big thoughts on the album. I'll kind of go on to talk about the individual tracks now. Yeah, and if anyone has any thoughts that they want to share, please share them. Salsa, I would love to hear why you think Daydreaming is the best Radiohead song. I don't yeah, I would love to hear if you have any reason why. Okay. So this album starts off with the song Burn the Witch. Oh, could you repeat what I said about Daydreaming? All I said is that I think it's a beautiful song and totally understand why Salsa has chosen that as the favorite. And I'd like to hear why Salsa likes that song if they want to share. All right, Tune. Yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging out as you. Oh my God, why can't I not say this? Thanks for hanging out as long as you have been here. I appreciate you as always. Yeah, definitely check out the album if you get the chance. I'll talk to you later. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Yes. Okay. So the album starts off with the song "Burn the Witch." It like many other opening tracks for Radiohead, I think that this song does a really excellent job for setting the stage and being the initial introduction for the album of like, hey, this is what you can expect, both kind of sonically and thematically, right? So in terms of what themes the songs explores, you know, this idea of burn the witch, right? False identity, society crafting these false identities for you, mob mentality, right? And I think like those things, right, tie in really nicely to the themes of like climate change, of like all those sorts of things. Anti-establishment is always something that like Radiohead has dabbled into in their work. There's a line in that song where it's like stay in the shadows, light the fire, right? Again, playing with those light and dark motifs again. And it's very relatable to me as a song. You know, I can't help but be a little bit like wary of this whole like witch hunt phrasing, because I feel like, you know, we've had politicians say that criticism against them, rightful criticism, has been labeled as a witch hunt. So I'm like a little bit hesitant to, you know, fully endorse this message. But I think like also this idea of like a mob is painting a certain kind of person as evil and will persecute against them is something that I really relate to as a trans person. You know, I feel like if there is any vulnerable population out there right now that does legitimately have a witch hunt out for them, I feel like it's trans women. You know what I mean? Like they are painted as such predators and such evil people, and yet that is not the reality, and it really is rooted in misogyny. So yeah, I really relate to this song from like that perspective. And then sonically, this song is so awesome. Like the opening, you know, instrumentation where we hear the violins, the strings. I don't remember the term for it right now, but there's a specific term for the technique that they use for the strings, where instead of like, you know, for a violin, like you slide the bow across the strings, but in the strings in this song, they do a technique where they actually kind of like hit the strings with the bow, and that creates this very like dramatic sound, right? This really epic orchestral sound. And then with that kind of and when the vocal line comes in, it's kind of like auto-tuned with this like electronic effect on it. And then we have like Tom York's vocal line come in after that, right? And that effect of like that vocal line with the really epic sounding strings, it just creates this like level of hype and excitement that really pulls you into the album in like this very visceral way. And personally, I also feel like this was like one of Tom York's best vocal performances on an album. Don't come at me there. I really feel like he really nails the vocal performance on this track. It's really great. Salsa here says, the piano tune is great, but it's all the other subtle noises that make up the track. I assume you're referring to Daydreaming. The way it builds up and swells at the end is incredible. It's not the saddest Radiohead song per se, but it gets me the hardest. Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree with you there. Yeah, and moving on to Daydreaming, I don't have too much else to say about Burn the Witch, but moving on to Daydreaming, yeah, so the piano is absolutely beautiful in this song. Like those arpeggiatic sounds really create that sense of like sadness and melancholy. Excuse me. And I have seen like some analysis of this song talking about how it's kind of like referring to Plato's allegory of the cave, which is a little bit more referenced, I think, also in the music video. It's so funny, actually. Like, when I watched this music video, I was like, oh, let me, you know, everyone's kind of talking about how the music video adds so much, like, meaning to the song. Let me go check out this music video. And I watched the music video, and I was like, why am I just watching Buffy season 4 finale Restless, where they're all walking through doors and going through this dreamscape. I don't know. I just thought that was really funny. I would not be surprised if there was some connection there, if there was some influence, even if it was just indirect somehow, that the Buffy season 4 finale Restless influenced this music video in some way. Maybe that's just my own headcanon, but that's the reality that I'm gonna live in. But yeah, so this song, Daydreaming, it's really about like grieving the loss of something, the end of something, facing a harsh truth that has come to light, facing the light of truth. You know, I think these allegories can be for a lot of things. I think it could be about, like, obviously Tom York's marriage, right? At the end of the song, there's like this kind of distorted demonic voice that's being played in reverse. And the line that's being played in reverse is half of my life, right? Which Tom York was with his wife for 23 years, which is half of his life. Radiohead as a band had been around for about 23 years, which is also half of Tom York's life. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of about all of these things, right? Like marriage, career, life, just anything that is painful to confront the reality of, and how we use daydreaming, right, as like a method of escapism. And something else I noticed as like a maybe not necessarily a theme with this album, but something interesting I noticed is that a lot of these songs tend to explore ideas that have already been explored in previous Radiohead songs throughout their discography, but from kind of like a new perspective, from kind of like a more mature, you know, now that they've got these new experiences, they're able to revisit these topics, revisit these themes in more nuanced ways, I guess, or more mature ways, or just different ways, I guess you could say. And you know, this idea of daydreaming to escape reality is a idea that they explored in their song How to Disappear Completely, which is also one of my favorite Radiohead songs of all time. But what's interesting about the song Daydreaming is that there's this added element of the sadness that comes with having to actually confront reality, right? Whereas with How to Disappear Completely, it was more so on like the pain, how reality is so painful that we like have to escape from it, whereas Daydreaming is about reality is so painful and we want to escape from it, and yet we still have to confront that truth, and we still have to face the light that is coming through the window. Yeah, what else do I have here in my notes? Sorry, my handwriting is so bad. Yeah, all the little like sound effects, those subtle like noises, the like reverse effects that happen in this song as well too. The reversing to me is also really interesting because it kind of ties into that idea of reminiscing, reflecting, going back in time. There's also a line in the song that goes, "It's too late, the damage is done." And during that line, you can hear those like subtle reversey vocal effects kind of going on in the background. And I feel like, you know, this idea of like, it's too late, the damage is done. And yet there's this feeling of like wanting to go back in time to fix things, right? The pain that comes from that feeling of like wanting to go back and fix things and do things differently, I think is represented in those reverse effects and those like subtle noises that are in the background of that song. And one part of the song that I think is just so cool and so beautiful is that like there's these little like vocal riffs that Tom York does that get reversed, and it sounds so cool, but then afterwards those same lines are now being repeated with the orchestra and with the string. And I don't know what the production was behind this, but there's like a really cool effect going on with the strings as well too, that like make it sound like almost like a Doppler effect kind of deal. And it kind of mimics that like reverse effect that was going on with the vocal lines. And it's just so cool to hear like these like weird, eerie, distorted, reversed vocal lines and then repeated with the really beautiful, warm, elegant strings. And it's like the same motif, but it feels so different because of the instrumentation. And it causes this really like 1 foot in reality, 1 foot out of reality feeling when you listen to that song, which is just really, really beautiful and really cool. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the song. It's just so awesome. I really would love to learn more about the production of this album too. There's just so many cool little effects that I just like, how did they do that? It's so awesome. Shout out to Nigel Godrich, who has been Radiohead's producer for most of their career. All right, I'm gonna blow my nose again. Sorry, guys. All right. Moving along here, Dex Dark is the number 3 track on this album, and I would say that this one is one of my favorite songs on the album. This one often feels like my number 1 favorite song. Sometimes it's my number 2 favorite song. It kind of goes back and forth with another song on the album, which I will talk about when I get to it, but this one tends to be one of my favorites when I'm listening to it. What the song is about, I think it's pretty self-explanatory actually in a lot of ways. It's very clearly like an allegory for something. Like the story that goes on in the song is that a spacecraft shows up and causes apocalyptic levels of destruction that is impossible to ignore, right? That is the actual like story that's going on in the song. But obviously that's a metaphor. Obviously that's an allegory for things, and I think it can be an allegory for a lot of things, right? Again, there's that idea of a darkness coming into your life, so something that is like so devastating that overpowers you and covers you in shadow, right? I feel like this darkness can represent a lot of things. I obviously, with Tom York's divorce, it could represent that. With their career ending, it could represent that. I feel like this one also kind of ties in nicely to the climate change references that we see throughout the album, because climate change is also this big otherworldly existential threat to humanity that we simply can't ignore and can't run away from. So it could be that. Another idea I had, and this could be a stretch, but personally I don't think it's a stretch. So this song, when I was listening to it for the first time, I was like, I really love this song. It's really familiar in a lot of ways, and I couldn't quite place my tongue on it for the longest time of why I thought this song sounded kind of familiar. And then it kind of hit me, because last year I went through a phase for a while where I was really obsessed with the album Mezzanine by Massive Attack, which is an album that came out in 95, 96, I want to say. But that album is also incredible. It's a kind of pioneer in the trip hop subgenre of hip hop, which, you know, is kind of like psychedelic hip hop. Is called trip hop. Awesome album. Just so unique. There's nothing else that quite sounds like it. Mezzanine was 98. Thank you, Tom. Yes, 98. Incredible album. But there's a track on that album called Teardrop, and you all might have actually heard at least the instrumentals to that song, because if you ever watched the TV drama House, the theme song to that song, or the theme song to that show rather, is the song Teardrop by Massive Attack from the album Mezzanine. But in the original album version, there's also a vocal track that is not in the House opening theme, but the vocal track is sung by a woman named Elizabeth Fraser, who is a, I believe, Scottish musician, Scottish singer, who is an incredible vocalist in her own right. But she, came to do the vocals for this track, Teardrop. And yes, Scottish. Thank you, Tom, for confirming. And something really devastating about the song Teardrop and about Elizabeth Fraser is before she went into the studio to record that song, she had just received the news of her boyfriend's passing. I believe her boyfriend was also a singer and musician. I apologize that I don't actually remember all this off the top of my head. Actually, I really hope to talk about Mezzanine as an album of the month sometime in the future as well too. So I will have my research by then to talk more about this story. But Elizabeth Fraser herself was dealing with a devastating loss, and personally, I feel like she carried that grief with her into the recording studio when she went to record Teardrop. And I personally believe that this song, Dark, was heavily inspired by Teardrop. And this is actually like something where I might actually I'm gonna pull up. I did like with September stream, I did upload this into my Twitch. Is messing up tonight. Oh no. Why is it messing up? Hold on, let me get my settings right here. Okay. Suffering all over the dang place. Oh no. Why is my camera not working? Okay. Where's my camera? There we go. Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to pull up Dark in my little splitter software because I wanted to compare specifically. I feel like the similarities between Dark and Teardrop are most evident in the drum lines. So here is the drum line for Dark. If I can get this to play. Yeah, there we go. Personally, I feel like this is a very trip-hop sounding drum beat in general, but it just sounds so similar to me. It sounds so similar to me. I think I have Teardrop in here. Yes, I do. Teardrop. Yeah, if I play the drum line here. Like, do you hear that? Do you hear... Like, they're obviously not the same, but it just seems very inspired to me, very similar to me. And what's actually also really cool about the Teardrop drum track is actually, like, if you listen to it, you can hear a little bit of like texture, like a little bit of static in the background. And that's because this song took that drum line as a sample from an earlier like 1960s jazz song, which the name I can't remember. But I think that this is just one of the coolest things about music and the story of music in general, is that like you know, we can start with a drum line in this like 1960s jazz song that's then taken as a sample to be put in this 90s trip hop song, which can then be used as inspiration for a Radiohead 2016 trip hop rock, weird prog rock kind of song, right? So yeah, magical, can hear the similarities. Yeah, absolutely. So I just think that that's so cool that like this sort of drum line can take on this new life and this new like context, and that's just the music of like, or the magic of music and the way that like we build on the shoulders of the people who came before us. I just think that's so cool. And another thing that I find very similar between Dextark and Teardrop is actually like the vocal line. So like if we listen to the vocal line here, let's see if it will play.
Then in your life there comes the darkness. There's a spacecraft blocking out the sky.
So what's really cool about this vocal line is that he has these kind of like down and up movements, right? Like um in your life there comes a darkness, a darkness. There's like this downward movement, right? And then there's a spacecraft blocking out the sky, the sky. There's like this upward movement there, right? And then I feel like Elizabeth Fraser does these similar movements in the vocal track for Teardrop. Like, let's listen to this.
Love is a verb, love is a doing word, fearless on my breath.
See, like, love is a verb, love is a doing word, doing word. There's like a downward motion there. And then fearless on my breath, breath. There's like an upward motion there. So I don't know if I'm just crazy that I'm hearing these similarities, but it just wouldn't surprise me, if Radiohead was inspired by this song to create Dextark. And I feel like that experience of Elizabeth Fraser and her own loss and her own grief actually fits in with the metaphor of what Dextark as a song is talking about, like this darkness, this sudden darkness that's unavoidable that comes into your life and causes apocalyptic destruction that's unavoidable. I just think that is really cool. You know what I mean? That there's that kind of thematic connection there. And there's also a line in this song that I thought was kind of interesting. There's your face in the glass is a line that comes later in the song. And this idea of glass is also a motif that kind of comes up in this album every so often. Looking through the glass, right? Like what could that kind of be a representation for? I feel like there's kind of multiple things that could mean or how you could interpret that. Like there's the idea of like seeing things clearly, seeing the outside world like through a window. But something else that like, and again, maybe this is a reach, right? But this whole album also kind of explores these ideas of reflection, of introspection, particularly also like reflecting back on Radiohead's career. And like I mentioned earlier, kind of like revisiting these ideas and topics and themes that they've explored throughout their discography in the past. And when I actually thought of the phrase "your face in the glass," funnily enough, one of the first things I thought of was the music video for No Surprises, which is of course one of their more popular songs off of OK Computer. But in that music video, like Tom York has his face in a bowl of glass that is like filling up with water. And I don't know if that's any connection to this line here, face in the glass, but that's just something that I thought of, like this idea of like reflecting on their past experiences and career as well too, which I just thought was interesting. Tom, as a basic bitch, loving No Surprises is your favorite. I don't blame you. It's a great song. Yeah, I don't blame you whatsoever. I've listened to every album and No Surprise is still my favorite. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, fantastic song. It deserves every praise that it gets. It's absolutely gorgeous and amazing. Yeah, so I just thought that this song, it's so interesting to me. There's lots of like references to the past, there's lots of connections to the past, there's lots, which I think is really beautiful and interesting. And just I think sonically, I think this is one of the catchiest songs on the album. Like that drum beat is just so catchy. That vocal melody is just so beautiful and just like really, really touching. The upwards and downwards movements are just like really, and also just genuinely like fun to sing along to. Yeah, this is easily one of my favorite tracks on this album, and maybe one of my favorite Radiohead songs of all time. I don't know, like my top 10 is always changing. My top 5 is always changing. I've been thinking also one day I should maybe like do a ranking stream where like we rank albums or rank songs or something like that, and I feel like I would have a lot to say for that. So yeah, that's definitely something I want to do in the future as well too. Let's see my notes here if I have anything else on this song that I want to say. Oh, one more thing that I just think is so cool. I found this out after listening to some like analysis on this song. So there were some videos that people talking about this song. And there's a part later in this song that I just think is so interesting and so cool. Let me see if I can find it. There, it's kind of towards the end. Okay, it's not showing in the drum track, but maybe it'll show in the instrumental track. Okay, you can kind of hear it here in the instrumental track, but there's this like kind of weird percussion beat that shows up in this song during this part. Actually, if I just go ahead and play this song normally, I like play this part of the song normally. That little like kind of, the best way I can describe it is like this quacking sound that kind of shows up in the percussion of that section of the song. I found out that the way that they make that sound is through the guitar amp. So the guitar amp has like springs in it that like reverb when you hit the amp. So these guys are either like literally kicking or like smacking their amp to make that sound. And I just think that that's so cool and so neat and so unique because like, Radiohead has always had these really interesting percussion sounds, whether it's through like drum machines and synths or through like actual like Philip Selway as their drummer. But yeah, that part of that song where they're actually like using the amplifier and the spring reverb as a percussive tool, I just think it's so fun and so unique and so neat, you know what I mean? And that's like just when I learned that that's how they got that sound and that's how they made that effect, I was just like, wow, that's so cool. Like, who would have thought to take this like weird sound that like many people would consider to be like a mistake, right? Like, oh, my amp is like making a weird sound when I smack it. Like, they use that as part of the song, and I just think that that's so cool. Okay. Salsa asks, have you heard all the Radiohead albums? Do you have a favorite? For a long time, Amnesiac was my favorite, but Hail to the Thief and Moonshaped Pool are some serious contenders. So Salsa, I have actually not listened to all of the Radiohead albums yet. I've listened to 6 or 7 of them, I want to say. I've not listened to King of Limbs, and I've not listened to the entirety of Hail to the Thief yet. I've listened to a couple of the tracks from Hail to the Thief, but I haven't listened to the entire thing yet. The way that I kind of have been listening to them is like, I tend to get like really obsessed with an album for like months at a time, right? And I really only started listening to them like a couple years ago. So I like was really obsessed with OK Computer when I first listened to that. It was my first obsession with them was OK Computer. That was the album that really got me like hyper obsessed with them. And then Kid A after that was like a religious experience for me. Like I can't really like understate how much that album like just affected me. And yeah, also In Rainbows as well kind of like I think In Rainbows has some of my favorite songs of Radiohead's discography, but as an album as a whole, it's not necessarily my favorite, although I do still think it's amazing. But if I had to pick a favorite, I would say Kid A. Kid A is my number one. And I would say A Moon-Shaped Pool has now kind of overtaken OK Computer as my number two and is now my number two. So yeah, that's how I would say it too. But I am looking forward to listening to the rest of their music so that I can kind of properly take in their entire discography. And also they have like so many like B-sides and remixes and extra bonus tracks and all that stuff that I haven't listened to either. So there's lots to go through. I'm taking my time with them. You know, I'm not in any rush to like listen to all their music. I'm kind of working my way through it slowly and kind of one thing at a time. So yes, Kid A is my number one. A Moon-Shaped Pool is my number two. Probably for now, OK Computer or In Rainbows. OK Computer and In Rainbows are, that's the thing. I would say like OK Computer as an album I like more, but In Rainbows there's some songs and some tracks on there that I like more. So it's a little bit complicated in that way. Alrighty. Let me take a sip of my coffee here. Alrighty. So Desert Island Dark is honestly probably my least favorite track on the album, but it's still a really beautiful track. I really love the kind of western wandering guitar sounds that are really present in this track. Trying to read my notes here. Why is my handwriting so bad? I think like this one is also probably the clearest kind of reference to Tom York's divorce and kind of his feelings about that. Um, One of my favorite parts of this song is actually towards the end where he's singing about different types of love are possible. And I feel like that's really clearly like, you know, re-examining his relationships, re-examining his romantic relationships, re-examining his career relationships. Yeah, I think like this is a pretty self-explanatory song, but still a really beautiful track and really ties the whole album together. And then number 5 for Full Stop, I this song is probably like my second favorite song in the album. I have two songs that I say are my number one favorite song in the album, but Full Stop I would say is like my second favorite song, maybe technically my third favorite song if you want to consider the other two number 1 and number 2. But I think that this song is so awesome. This is definitely like the darkest kind of moodiest, I would say, track on the album, like the most angsty track on the album, even though the other songs are like very sad and very melancholy and very devastating, very somber. I would say this song is more angry, more Tom, that's so funny. Tom York not beating the most divorceable man allegations. Oh man, ain't that the truth? Um Yeah, and so I feel like full stop, right? Like this idea of full stop, something that's at the end of something, right? Like this song is really about reflecting on the end of something, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a career, your band, what have you, right? Like that's kind of what this song is about. Um Weirdly, I don't know what it is about this song. I really think it's like the fact that it opens, like the song opens with this drum line. Hold on, I can actually maybe pull it up. And maybe I'm crazy. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna pull it up. It's not worth it. The drum line of this song weirdly reminds me of the song "Hey Ya." You know, the "Hey Ya." There's something similar about the drum line of both of those songs, and I like whenever I listen to Full Stop, I'm kind of like, this is the dark version of "Hey Ya." This is like the evil Hey Ya's evil twin is kind of how I think of it sometimes, which is just kind of funny. But uh I also really love the like repeating like drumming guitar line that is like present throughout the entire song. I just think like that sound is like so cool and so like visceral in a lot of ways. And then the part of the song where he goes like the truth will mess you up, like that has like a really really fun guitar line in it, like that is very playful in a lot of ways. Actually, you know what? I am gonna pull up that part of the song because I do genuinely enjoy it that much. Uh, Let me see if I can find it. So
You be trapped in your full stop.
so he has this repeated vocal line, "Truth will mess you up," and then the guitar part during that part is just so what I really love about that guitar part is that like it kind of sounds like it's the same thing, da na 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 na, but then there's this kind of these little tiny variations, da na 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 na, like it goes a little bit higher, goes a little bit lower, and those little like inflections just like add so much emotion to that guitar line. Like it's hard for me to really describe how it does that because I don't really have like the musical knowledge to be able to articulate like how it functionally is doing that. But just like those little movements where like it goes a little bit higher, it just sort of like creates this feeling of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like this longing, this yearning, this reaching, this tension. I don't know really how else to describe it, but it's just really cool and really beautiful. Um Yeah, and it's just such a funky little guitar riff too. Really cool. Okay, and then with track number 6 with Glass Eyes, man, my freaking god, guys, this song is so beautiful. I cannot really get over how beautiful and sad and melancholic and just emotional this song is. Like that opening riff, I'm gonna pull it up actually, just because like this opening little lick from the piano. Oh my god, I it's like it pulls my heart out, you know what I mean? Like those little like I don't know how to describe it. Those little like sound effects, those little like ripple effects that goes on in the piano during that section. I have no idea how they made those sounds. It's so cool and so beautiful. And it just like it gives this visualization of light refracting and reflecting through like a glass prism. Like I don't know how else to really describe the imagery that comes to my head when I hear those like little ripple sounds. You know what I mean? It sounds like light refracting. That's like the best way I can describe it. And it's so cool. It's so beautiful. Um and then like you listen to the words, and the vocal performance in this song is so like emotional. Like he's very much not like in tune in this song, but it like carries this weight, this like sadness that I really appreciate about Tom York's vocal performance a lot of the time, because like, you know, he doesn't auto-tune his vocal performance. Like sometimes he does sound a little bit off key or a little bit like, not quite right, but the emotion and the heaviness that comes with his performance is so visceral and would be lost if it were being corrected with auto-tune and like all this other stuff. So that's something I really appreciate about like Radiohead and their performances, that there's this rawness to them, there's this realness to them that like conveys that emotion in a way that I think gets lost a lot of time in modern music. Let's see here. Yeah, and so there's this line in the song. So at the beginning of the song, he's like, in this train station. He's like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if I should leave. Again, with those themes of feeling lost and wandering and isolated. Then in the kind of main refrain of the song, he says like, oh gosh, what are the lyrics? I'm actually gonna pull it up real quick just so that I get it correctly. Radiohead, Glass Eyes lyrics. Oh yeah, so this part right here. In the oh so smugged glassy-eyed light of the day. Glassy-eyed light of the day. So what does that really mean? I feel like this is first of all, the melody in this line is just so beautiful. In the oh so smug glassy-eyed light of the day. It's so beautiful. It's so compelling. And glassy eyes I kind of interpret in multiple different ways, right? Like obviously there's kind of the surface level, like, oh, there's tears in your eyes and you're sad, right? Glassy eyes, which I think is definitely a part of it. There's also something interesting to be said about looking through glass, right? There, again, glass is kind of another image that kind of pops up in this album a lot, but looking through the glass, seeing something clearly, right? Seeing something in a new light, the glassy eyed light of the day, light being shed on something, a reality coming to fruition, right? These are what I think it's kind of evoking here, both a realization of truth and also a sadness, which is just like so poetic that this line is able to kind of convey both of those meanings. And then we're kind of getting this nature imagery again here. Path trails off, heads down a mountain. I don't know where it leads. I don't really care. Again, there's a sort of ambivalence there, right? Like it's not necessarily sad or happy, right? Like the future is unknown, and there's like a maybe I don't really care because I don't give a fuck what happens to me because I'm just so depressed, or it's just like I don't really care because there's nothing, I have no direction, right? I have no specific direction, and so like whatever happens just sort of happens, right? So yeah, just like that feeling of wandering, that feeling of feeling lost, directionless. Yeah, and just the piano chords that it like descends into as it goes into the outro of the song is just so devastatingly beautiful. The only bad thing I have to say about this song is that it's way too short. It's like a 2-minute song. It's deserves to be longer. I could listen to the song for so long. It's just so beautiful. um Tom here says it's also worth noting that glassy eyes reverse to zoning out and losing your focus, like glazing over. Yeah, absolutely. I like that interpretation as well too, because I think like this song kind of like ties into the song Daydreaming, right? The song Daydreaming where he's um looking through the glass and uh his mind is wandering about like escaping reality, right? So yeah, I think like those two things tie together as well too. So yeah, that's a really good observation. Thank you, Tom. uh oh, another thing I wanted to say about this song. So Charles Cornell, who is another YouTuber on YouTube who makes really great videos about music. He's a jazz pianist and he does awesome videos breaking down like soundtracks and video game soundtracks and movie soundtracks and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, Charles is awesome. Highly recommend his channel. And he's been on a little bit of a Radiohead kick recently where he's been doing some Radiohead videos. And the few that I've watched are all really well done. He's really smart when it comes to analyzing music. He's really great at like picking out motifs and musical sounds and whatnot. And something that he actually pointed out, which I thought was really interesting, he did a video on this song specifically on Glass Eyes. And he pointed out that something that Radiohead uses a lot in this song and in many of their songs in general is something called common tones. And again, I'm not a musician, I'm not a music theorist, so I don't really know too much about this stuff. But my understanding from what common tones are is that when you have different chords, sometimes within those chords, they share the same note. So a note can be played in one chord and another chord, but because of the other notes that are in the chord, it changes the context of that original note and the emotion and the meaning that that note will have within a chord. And you know, he didn't really get too much into like why they do this or like the function of common tones and like what they actually functionally really do. He just sort of pointed out that this was something that they utilize and that it is something that is like causing this feeling, right? Like it's being used in this track. But how I interpreted it and how, if I were to ascribe meaning to why common tones are used, there's something very interesting to me about that idea of something that is the same but interpreted differently in different contexts, right? So like one note can be used in one chord and the same note can be used in another chord, but this chord can sound really happy and this chord can sound really sad, even though one of the notes in the chord is the same. But that note is functionally being used differently within the two different chords, which gives these two sounds different emotions and different meanings. So why I think that it's really cool and interesting that common tones are being used in this song and in Radiohead's music in general. You know, in an earlier track, we had that line, different types of love are possible, right? And so I feel like this idea of something being the same but being different depending on the context that it's being viewed through kind of folds really nicely with that idea of relationships that were once the same, but now that a different context is come to light, there's a new reframing and a new reimagining for what that relationship means. That could be a stretch. That could just be like my wild interpretation there, but I don't know. I just thought that that was kind of interesting. And the use of common tones as a method of storytelling to me are quite interesting. I'm not a songwriter, so I don't know if that's kind of like how they're functionally used, but that's kind of just how I interpreted it, which I thought was really interesting. All right. Okay, so the next song on the track is Identikit. And this is the one that I would say is probably my favorite song on the album. This one and Dex Dark always kind of goes back and forth for me for my favorite song. This song is just so unique and so cool. First of all, I'm absolutely obsessed with the drum line in this song. And what I think is so cool about the drum line is that like it just changes up the pattern every so often. So like when I play this drum line, you'll get what I'm saying. So like this phrase, right? Like da 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 da. I don't know, like it like changes, like it's different every time, and it keeps it so interesting and keeps you like engaged with that beat. It's just so funky. All right, Tom, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate ya. I'll catch you later. Yeah, that drum line is just so cool and so funky to me, and I think like that's one of the strengths for Radiohead's drum lines in general, right? Is that they're so unique and they're so creative and they're so fun, and it's like it's not cookie cutter, right? It's not like they took one little drum line and then just repeated it throughout the entire song. It's like this drum is changing and fluctuating and riffing throughout the entire song, which I think is just so fun. And this drum line along with the guitar line, and the guitar line is so cool too because they're using this like delayed effects pedal on the guitar that causes these like kind of repeated phrases. And it's just such a unique creative thing to like use the delay in that way. And the drums and the guitar, in my opinion, create this very like reggae-ish kind of sound, which is why earlier I was kind of saying that they like play with genre a little bit. I don't know, this song seems very like reggae inspired to me. And this one is very clearly to me about like identity, false identity, right? Like this idea of identikit, of having this like little toolkit that you use to piece together an identity, whether it's like for yourself, the way that you project yourself to the world, or it's building these identities for the people that we interact with, maybe even like parasocially, right? Like there's a line in this song where it's like the sweet-faced ones with nothing left inside that we all can love, right? And I feel like that's an idea of like these celebrities that we can like project onto, that we can like put on this pedestal in this way because we have this idea of what their identity is, this like facade, this mask that they have that we can put together and pull ourselves into, you know? Um And I just really love the vocal line, like I don't want to know when I see you messing me around. I don't want to know. Again, I don't know if that's the idea of like I don't want to know like what you're saying about my persona, my like identikit that I have created for myself, or whether it's I don't want to deal with your fake persona, right? And again, like this song and the themes, this is an idea that was initially explored in their song Fake Plastic Trees from the Bends. This idea of, oh, everyone is putting on a facade, everyone is fake, we have to put on these like masks in order to interact with society. And in that song, in Fake Plastic Trees, the idea was it wears me out, right? Like it's so exhausting, it's so sad and tiring that we like live in this world where everyone is fake, right? Whereas in this song, it kind of explores that same idea through a more mature lens, right? Where instead of it's like, oh man, everyone's so fake, isn't that so sad? And I'm so tired of it. It's more so like, yes, everyone is fake to some extent. We all have these personas, these identities that we craft for ourselves and that we project onto other people. But that is kind of like just the reality. There's not really a commiseration about it in this song. It sort of is acknowledging that the speaker themselves has an identikit that they use as well too. Um you know, kind of the bridge of this song, there's a repeated refrain that goes, broken hearts make it rain. And the way that I interpret that line, I think like there's kind of a surface level reading of that line where it's like, okay, yeah, when your heart is broken, you're sad and you cry, right? But also like, you know, make it rain specifically has this additional connotation of like making money, you know what I mean? And so I wonder if this is even just kind of like a reflection on Radiohead's music and their career in general, because they have created this brand, this identity for them of being like sad, broken heart music, right? So like are they taking their own sadness and pain and creating this commercial product for it that they're selling to people who resonate with those emotions, right? So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's multiple ways you can interpret that line, both in kind of like an earnest, like sad way, and also like a double meaning, like putting on a persona kind of way. Da, 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 da. Oh, one more note I have about the song, which I just think is really cool. The way that I interpret the way the song is arranged, because there's like these layering vocal tracks where this repeated background refrain is sort of like always kind of there in the background, and then there's this progressive guitar line which starts off very like minimal. Like if we listen to the guitar part in the beginning, it kind of like repeats the same thing, and it's like very minimal. There's not a lot of movement there. But then as we get towards the end of the song, there's like this dissension, right? There's like this downward movement with the guitar. And then it goes back up, right? Like there's a lot more movement with the guitar towards the end of the song. And the way that I interpret that is the guitar represents this like bottled up emotion that the speaker, the singer, is trying to contain. And then towards the end of the song, you know, we get this really epic guitar solo. And it's kind of just like this big explosion of emotion. So like once the vocal track fades out and this guitar sort of takes over, and the bass line too. The bass line in this song is just so cool. Both kind of like before it gets to this like exploding part, and then during the exploding part. Like if I go back here to the bass. It's just got this really fun, funky, like really varied movement with the bass line. It's just really cool, and like layers with the guitar just so awesomely. So I love this song. This one and Dex Dark are probably my number one on this album. Just so catchy, so cool. And really emotionally resonate with me as well too. Like this idea of, again, bottling up our emotions, right? And having this be a part of us inside that we're trying to contain. I think it's just really relatable. And then the next song, The Numbers. It's kind of funny to me that a lot of people think that this album is Radiohead's like most downer album, the saddest album, which I think is like kind of true. Like Glass Eyes and True Love Waits are pretty sad songs. Daydreaming is a pretty sad song. So I can understand why this is pretty widely considered one of Radiohead's saddest albums. But to me, The Numbers is actually their most like uplifting song in their entire discography. Like I think it's the most positive, optimistic song in their entire discography. And you know, most people do interpret this as kind of like a protest song. It's kind of in that folk ballad style where it's like a like kind of Neil Young-esque kind of protest folk ballad, which is again them kind of like playing with the genres in this album too. It's pretty widely interpreted to be about climate change. There's some interesting lines in there that I think also are kind of double meaning. There's a line in there about the river running dry, the wings of butterflies, right? Which I think like a lot of people are like, oh, they're talking about climate change. But I also think like the specific use of those two images, right? Like the river and the butterfly, those are also two things that are often used to describe time and the passage of time, right? Like time flows like a river, right? It kind of goes in one direction, but then also there's like the butterfly effect, right? Like the wings of butterflies, one action today can cause a ripple effect for something in the future, right? And you know, this song is kind of like the future is inside of us one day at a time, right? Like there's this idea of like we have the power within us to make change for the future, whether that's regarding climate change or just like a more optimistic future in general. And I thought that that was a really neat double meaning with those lines, with tying into both the nature imagery and also uh this idea of time, reflection, moving forward into the unknown, and how we as individuals can affect the future. So yeah, it's really interesting to me that this is one of their most like optimistic, upbeat, positive songs, and it's on the most like depressing album of their discography, which is kind of funny. And then the next song, Present Tense. This is actually the song that I first heard on Shuffle that like pulled me into the album. This is just a really beautiful song. That guitar riff, and the kind of bossa nova drum beat that we got going on is really, really catchy and really cool. And the vocal harmonies are just so haunting and so beautiful. Um, it just really is just pulls you in as you listen to it. And this one I feel like is a pretty, actually it's funny, like this song reminds me of the song Reckoner from their album In Rainbows in a lot of ways. Both like the guitar riffs I feel are a little bit similar, in the way that like kind of the picking patterns are kind of similar. And then also I feel like thematically these songs are pretty similar as well too. Like, Reckoner is a pretty open-ended song. I feel like that's one of their more like abstract, most widely interpreted songs. Like kind of everyone has a different interpretation for what that song means. To me, that song is sort of like a dealing with the concept of death, dealing with trying to live in the present reality while there's kind of this looming fear of death kind of always in the background. And this song as well too, it's not necessarily about like death per se. I think it's kind of more about like the end of a relationship, the end of Tom York's marriage and whatnot. uh but it still kind of plays with that idea of using music, using dancing, using like avoidance, using music as an avoidance to avoid the harsh reality of the world. Again, like that staying in the dark, that ignorance is kind of also playing a theme into this song, trying to avoid reality. Yeah, I don't know if I have too much else to say about this song. I just think it's really beautiful. And it's probably my number 3 track on the album. Number 4, I guess, if you count Dextark and Identikit as number 1 and 2. So yeah, really, really beautiful track. And weirdly, it's one of the rare times that I listen to a song for the first time and just like immediately fall in love with it. Usually it takes me like a few times to listen to a song for me to really appreciate it, but this one I like listened to it right away and was like, wow, this is an amazing song. Really, really awesome. Excuse me while I blow my nose again. All right. Okay. Next song on the track list is it's got a kind of funny name. Tinker. What is it? What is the actual full title of this song? Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. Which I guess is sort of like an English like nursery rhyme uh kind of thing. Um I'm unfamiliar with it. This song, I will admit, I have not thought too much about like its meaning or really like what I think the words are trying to say. This one I think is a lot more like just vibes in my opinion. The chord progression on this song is just so cool, so interesting, so kind of mysterious. And then uh the way that the vocal line and the chord progression, the instrumentals, the synths kind of play off of each other to me is like one of my favorite parts of this song. Um like one of my favorite parts of this song is when he goes like, all you have to do is say yes, and then the kind of like the synths kind of follow the yes, yes, bum bum. Like I don't know, I just really find that moment to be really satisfying. And then towards the end of the song, the strings that come into play here are just so beautiful. I love the descending melody that the strings do in the outro, the da 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 da. I just That's just so beautiful to me, and like really creates this like beautiful movement and sadness whenever I listen to it. um and then in terms of like how I think what I think the words mean, I think like again there's kind of a allusion to nature here. There's kind of like a predator prey type of relationship uh that's being displayed, and then a sort of like acceptance, right, of that nature, that the nature of that relationship. And I think like that sort of idea, now that I'm thinking about it, is also explored in the song Optimistic from Kid A. And again, this is kind of like a revisiting of that idea, right? Like revisiting the idea of nature being cruel and needing to be the fittest to survive, right? That's sort of like an idea that is explored in Radiohead's discography. Um yeah, so that's how I feel about that song. And then I'll go ahead and move on to the last song here. True Love Waits. This song is so fascinating. First of all, this song has a really long history with the band. This song was actually initially written back in like 94, 95. I want to say like before their second album came out. And they have played this song multiple times in like live performances, and it used to sound like so much more different. Like it was played mostly with guitar rather than the piano version that we hear in the album. Some of the lines were different, some of the verses were different, and I think like the idea of like this song, and actually many of the songs on this album have been songs that Radiohead had been working on for many years. Some of them they like played at some live shows before the songs were before the songs were officially released. So True Love Waits is one of the songs where they played it live and they had versions of it before they officially released this studio version, but it had gone through so many different iterations. There's so many different versions of the song that sound so differently, and I think like that in and of itself on a meta level ties really nicely with the theme of like reflection and introspection and looking back on the career of Radiohead, and the fact that this is like the last song in their album, the last song in their entire nine album discography. I think it's kind of like this beautiful full circle moment thing, you know what I mean? And full circle, thinking also about the album art cover is a circle, right? There's just it just sort of like ties in so nicely all together. Um yeah, so this song has a long history with the band, with Tom York. I interpret this song as kind of like a very cynical view about love, cuz like you hear the title True Love Waits, right? And you think it's like, oh, it's some romantic song. But actually like when you listen to the words and when you really interpret the words, the way that I interpret it is it's sort of about the pain that comes with the desperation for wanting to be loved, and how someone can shrink themselves. They can like metaphorically cut off their limbs in order to seem more palatable, in order to fit into this idea of being loved by another person, right? Like I am going to sacrifice all of my needs. I am going to cut out everything that I think that I want and need for the sake of this other person, because if I don't do that, they are going to not love me. And that's kind of how I interpret this song, is like it's about that feeling of I just want to be loved so badly. I will do anything. I will cut off my own hands in order to be loved by you. That kind of idea. There's this really devastating line in the song where it's like true love waits on lollipops and crisps. And actually, if I pull that line up, because I want to make sure I get this correct. True love lives on lollipops and crisps. So, like Simon and Betty from Adventure Time. Oh my gosh, magical. You're so right. That's exactly it. Um, so this line is in reference to this article, right? Tom York had said in an interview, I read an article about a child who was between 5 to 8 years old who was left on his or her own for a week in a house when his parents left on holiday, and he lived on lollipops and crisps. True, right? So that's like, it's really sad. It's really devastating. It's like this idea of, I will literally starve myself because all I want is to be loved by someone, right? Like a child who has been abandoned by their parents doesn't understand this idea of sacrificing myself for these people is like not worth it, right? Because they're just a child, and like all they really understand is like, this is the people who are supposed to love me, and I'm going to starve myself on, you know, junk food in order to remain loved by these people who so clearly like don't give a shit about me, right? Yeah, I find this like very sad and beautiful and very cynical, but also, if I'm being honest, kind of relatable. Like I admittedly, like I've been in toxic relationships in the past, and I will admit that this is a fault that I've had in the past, and part of the big reason why I've been single for so long is because I have just had this habit of shrinking myself and sacrificing my own needs in order to not be abandoned by the other person that's supposed to love me. And that has led to really devastating consequences for me. And I have, you know, really had to learn that that is something that is really harmful and not good for me. And so, like, you know, obviously, if I ever get into a relationship in the future, that's something that I need to keep in mind, is like not forget my own needs and my own wants and not completely sacrifice myself for another person in order to not be abandoned by them, right? For that fear of being abandoned. So that's how I interpret this song. And then this version of the song, right, has this really beautiful piano instrumentation. It's really just Tom York and the piano. There's really no other instrumentation on this track, which is pretty consistent with the earlier versions of this track too, where it was really just him and the guitar. But the difference between the guitar instrumentation and the piano instrumentation, you could interpret the guitar version to be a bit more optimistic, to be a bit more like, I will be loved by someone. Whereas with this version, I think the emphasis is more on the tragedy, the tragic nature of the sacrifice and the tragic nature of the loss, right? And then it's really sad, especially in the context of real life, right? Like this line of "don't leave," and then Tom York's wife leaving him and then also passing away shortly afterwards. It's really sad and really devastating, and really a somber note to end the album on. But I really can't think of a better way to end this album or end the discography of Radiohead, you know, with this song that has been with them since the beginning of their career. This version of the song that has this sadness and this tragedy element to it. Yeah, this version of the song, I think like a lot of fans tend to prefer the guitar version, the more optimistic version. And at first I thought I did too, but this version really grew on me. The layering with the piano lines are just so sublime. It's so beautiful. Yeah, and this song just makes me cry. It's so beautiful and so sad, and I love it. And I love Radiohead. I'm sorry to say. Um, yeah, and that's really all I have to say today. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I would love to hear if anyone has any thoughts on this album. If anyone has any thoughts on any of the specific tracks, please let me know. I would love to hear what your favorite track on this album is, if you have one. Whether that's in the chat right now, or if you want to drop it in the comments on the VOD for this video in the future. I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on this album. I would love to also hear your interpretations, if there's things that you agreed with that I said, or things that you disagreed with, or something that I said that like maybe you were like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I would love to hear that. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well too. Yeah, I absolutely love this album, and I have thank you so much. You know, just to repeat from the Thanksgiving weekend, I'm super grateful. I am just so glad to have this outlet and to have this space and to have people actually be interested in what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. That really means a lot to me. It's not lost on me how much that really means to me. So thank you again so much for hanging out. It really means a lot to me. I am going to try to work this month as hard as I can to edit these streams down into VODs. So once I do that, they will be up on the video tab of the channel, and hopefully a little bit more easily shareable with other people. And you can you know, just get the highlights as well too, if you wanted to relive certain parts of the stream in the past. So I'll be working on that. And then for the December Media of the Month stream, I am actually not going to be doing one property or like one thing to talk about. I am going to be doing a sort of 2025 year in review wrap up, just sort of all of my favorite things from the year, between albums and movies and TV shows and books that I've read. I just sort of want to do a like, hey, here's some of my favorite things from the year. And to be also clear, these are not going to be necessarily things that came out this past year. These are just going to be things that I enjoyed this year. So they could be old movies, old albums, old stuff or whatever, but they are new to me, something that I experienced for the first time, or something that I really loved a lot this year. That's sort of my goal with this next stream. So yes, that's going to be December stream. It's going to be a 2025 year in review wrap up. And then hopefully you'll also be seeing the VODs, the edited versions of these streams on the video channel as well too. So keep your eyes out for that. And yeah, that's all I have to say for today. Thanks again for hanging out, everyone. Sincerely appreciate it. We will be back next. What day is the next stream? It's going to be the last Sunday of December. So we'll see you on the 28th, December 28th at noon PST. We'll be talking about all my favorite things from the year, and I will catch you then. So until then, stay safe and take care, everyone. Have a wonderful December. Have a good holiday season, however you decide to celebrate. And stay safe and take care, everyone. I will see you all then. Bye-bye.